So I've given it the specific information I want filled in on this form, and I've told it to then send it. Damn, this is cool. Okay, I get the hype. Again, I'm running this with a burner phone. Not burner, because that makes me sound like a criminal. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Clawdbot, which you've already heard of. You're familiar with it, but I wanted to do this a little differently. So I did get this weird looking Mac Mini. Now, we're going to be using the Strix Halo with GPT-OSS 120B to see how well it can perform with Clawdbot using local models only. In addition to this, the first part of the video is going to basically just be my experience kind of vibe setting this up and finding things out. It actually has relatively impressive results, so the stuff we end up doing is very cool. The second half of this video is going to be a tutorial on how to get this set up and working locally on your system, assuming you're using some flavor of Linux with LM Studio. So the entirety of this video is done with offline local AI models, as Clawdbot is pretty cool, but the API costs can balloon quite fast. So I wanted to see if it was useful with local AI models, which I'm extremely happy to report that it is. Additionally to that, check this out. This is running locally right now with GPT-OSS 120B on the Strix Halo machine behind me, and I only have it set up right now to work with the Chrome browser, but it actually is quite proficient at using tools, especially browser automation, which is something that I've been very interested in for quite a while, back to even December of 2023, which feels like ages. So check this out. Search, or I'll say, I can't think of live prompting. Use the browser and search for me and tell me who he is. And I'm going to send it right here. This is the Strix Halo 128GB machine with GPT-OSS 120B loaded in with a max context length right now. So you see, I did not do anything. This is attached to a Chrome browser instance that has specifically been given to it, and we can see that it did just autonomously use that browser instance to search for Bijan Bowen. It is now going to perform some form of research and findings and hopefully then respond with pertinent information about myself. But the Chrome instance we see, we can basically just minimize out of it or go back to the main Clawdbot web UI, keeping in mind that this is something that a lot of folks have been using with phones through Telegram, or if you're not necessarily like a criminal and not using Telegram and Signal, I'm kidding, but you can also use it with WhatsApp, which is probably what we'll do. So right now I'm going to wait for this specific thing to actually return a result, but I have to say I saw a ton of channels testing this, and I always kind of like to see, depending on the level of hype, and I know I'm guilty of being like, this model's insane, but a lot of channels I saw pushing this are the ones that are like, yo bro, buy my workflow course, I'll make you rich. It's like, yeah, press X to doubt. So with that, I wanted to actually showcase something a little more technical with this, being that I assume a lot of my viewers are probably a bit more technical if you've subscribed to this channel, and this is seemingly kind of performant with a local model. So I'm excited to test this in the more technical way of actually showing it do some interesting things, as opposed to like, oh my god, it scripted my video. And I imagine a lot of folks are going to want to see the specific steps that led me to be able to use this with LM Studio. It seems that Clawdbot kind of uses a JSON file for a lot of setup, so it's actually kind of simple once you understand. I will paste the specific JSON configuration with some simple instructions in a GitHub gist and put it in the description of this video, so you can play with this hooked up to an LM Studio instance, which makes it a bit simpler. Now, sadly, it appears that we have seen some form of issue where the server stopped responding and the model is now just kind of not doing anything, but we did see some level of progress, and this is obviously the downside of using this with a local model, is while it is not going to kill you in API costs, it's going to be far less performant than using something that is linked to an API. It is a trade-off, and depending on how you wish to play with this, it's one that, as a kind of like someone who likes to just hack around with things, it's kind of cool to use a local model. So I am actually just going to take a peek at some of the logs right here, which we can do. So they're already open there, but I'll hop back into them right here. So we have a few logs, and this is actually a pretty interesting tool. I find the GitHub repository for this is rather intimidating upon first glance, even for someone who kind of is a little familiar with some of this stuff. So it's just interesting. Now, because this video, I'm going to be testing this kind of organically, so we're going to just kind of see as we go what it's capable of doing with a local model, what its limitations are. In keeping with that specific thing, I'm going to use this and just paste the Clawdbot logs to GPT-OSS 120B and say what specifically went wrong here. And I'll just paste the logs in. and we'll see if we get a proper answer or not, but maybe it will give us a little pertinent information. Regardless of what happens here, the interesting thing is it did initially properly use that browser tool to search for what we asked it to using our Chrome instance that it is attached to, that it is allowed to use. So this is neat, and this definitely would have some potential, allowing you to do things remotely from a phone or something, controlling this on a local isolated system that you have something running on. So let's see what it says here for our log outputs. The snippet you posted shows a completely successful request cycle. Not quite. I'll try a simpler task. Just find the Apple stock price and tell me it, okay? We see that it did quickly open the browser and search for Apple stock price, and this is cool because it's a local model doing all of this. Now, hopefully the culmination of a successful run here will be that this actually returns the price for us. This is not a vision model, so it will have to use what it reads in code unscientifically from interacting with the browser, as opposed to taking a screenshot and being able to parse it and return to us that bit of information. So I can't imagine using this with a vision model would likely be a bit more performant, although this specific workflow should actually allow it to work without needing vision capabilities, at least for what we're doing right here. So the provided unsupported fields, prompt cache here, not supported. Okay, that's fine. We should. And I noticed sometimes it seemingly will get in a loop here, and this was happening as well with GLM 4.7 Flash. Let's stop this for now. We'll go through actually setting this up just from the start, and I will specifically in that setting show how to make sure that it stays using LM Studio, and then we'll test it on WhatsApp and see what's happening there. Get it? No. Subscribe. Now, before we get into this kind of brief setup process showing how to get it working, at least with the local model, I want to give some disclaimers. Upon initial glance of this tool, I was very, very skeptical. Seeing the raw amount of hype that was generated with it always kind of triggers some form of low-level red flag in my mind, as it was somewhat reminiscent of like the crypto hype and pump and dumps and things of that sort. I've also seen like a lot of comments on videos other creators have made being like, this is a paid targeted ad campaign, which to be honest with you, I had that thought as well. I want to make very, very clear, I'm making this because it's very popular right now in tech media, so it would be stupid as a content creator not to cover it. But there are extreme security risks with this for someone who just carelessly goes and installs this on their own system. The Strix Halo behind me does not have any important information of myself on it. It is not even connected to my main network. Additionally, the phone that we're going to be playing with in conjunction with Clawdbot today also has no important information about myself. It is not my phone number, and it is a phone that I can use to do just random stuff like testing this without any security concerns. So be very, very conscientious of how you go about using this tool. I did some more intricate look through this. I actually used Codex to browse the repository and be like, okay, what specifically do you notice here? Is this set up to be a botnet or something like that? Is there like some secret thing in here that makes it very bad? Because people always say, well, it's open source, you can look through the code, but I find 99% of folks will not actually go ahead and do that. And this is a rather intimidating repository at first glance, just with the massive amount of stuff you see right here. So I had Codex look at it, and it basically culminated the response that there's no inherent risk with this aside from misuse, meaning if you just carelessly set this up on your computer, yeah, you can very much potentially show your API keys or more sensitive information via prompt exfiltration or stuff like that. So the whole TLDR of this section is be very careful while using this, but nothing I see here is something that did not exist prior to the introduction of this tool in some regard or another. This is just seemingly a very centralized way in which to use a lot of things that folks may find interesting. And if this is something that actually has a lot of normies figure out like, whoa, I can do this with AI, like this is quite incredible, then that's kind of cool. The downside of that is just be careful with it security-wise. I mean, you don't want like, oh, I pushed an update, someone pushed an update to this like cool workflow I downloaded, and now it like searched my computer for crypto keys and stuff. Just be careful. So that's my like security-minded conscientiousness warning that I wanted to prominently display in this video. With that now, we're basically going to go ahead and just take a peek at how we can at least preliminarily get this set up with our local LM Studio model. So I've already obviously installed this using NPM. There is a specific documentation website for this as well, which has a ton more pertinent information. But regardless of that, let's just run this. I understand this is powerful and inherently risky. So first and foremost, we do get a disclaimer kind of reiterating some of what I had just talked about. Yes. Now this is where I got a little frustrated because In order to get this working with LM Studio, and keep in mind, my LM Studio configuration is already set up in the Clawdbot JSON configuration, which is reflected right here, existing config detected. If I press use existing values right here, it will still do this. So it's frustrating because if I select one of these, I might mess up or overwrite my config. So to keep it with LM Studio, I scroll down to skip for now. Following that, I have to then click all models here, and then keep current model. So after doing all that, it gives me the option to keep the specific local model that I had already set it up with in the config, which I will paste in a GitHub gist. So I press enter there, and then we're all set, at least in terms of the LLM that this is hooked up to. And remember, this is cool because it orchestrates a lot of things, but it is the LLM that is powering all of this capability, and that's just something to keep in mind. All right, I did take a deep breath because I was talking far too quickly. So now you can basically select a channel. It seems this is prominently designed to be used with a phone or some chat app. Based on that is the main picture of what is shown in the GitHub repository here. So for this, again, as I may have said before, because I'm not a criminal, we're going to just use WhatsApp. And I am partially kidding. So we press enter there. Do we want to link WhatsApp? Which we will, and then it will give us a very interesting lime green QR code, which is a result of the terminal theme that I have on this system. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention like the whole Mac Mini thing. I don't know. I mean, I have two Mac Minis over there, but the Strix Halo is better to use this. So now with the phone, I am just going into my camera, and I will select this QR code right here, logging in. Okay, scary, but interesting. Again, be very security conscious when doing this. None of these devices have anything important on them whatsoever. And you can see, well, hopefully, it just says logging in. Couldn't link device, try again later. Okay, device status, it seems to have worked. After a little bit of, I'm not entirely sure what happened. We just kept trying it and it worked. This is my personal phone number. This is a separate phone just for Clawdbot. My personal phone number, the phone you will message from. All right, now I need to go ahead and do that, and I don't know this phone number by heart. All right, and it seems like WhatsApp is now all set. Recommend a separate phone and eSIM, both of which we are using. And I will enable session memory here. Gateway service is already installed. Should we restart it? Sure. This seems pretty robust in terms of like restarting things and stuff like that. And then finally, we're going to do open the web UI. So when we press enter, it just brings us back to this Clawdbot gateway dashboard, which we saw earlier in the video. I do have to say, again, kind of like with the GitHub repository, this is at first glance rather intimidating to just deal with. And we can see the prompt processing is still extremely slow with GPT-OSS 20B loaded in, but it's much quicker than it was. Although it's curious because this model was responding so much quicker before, I almost feel like I should just restart everything, which I may very well do. Okay, so I'm editing the video right now and I realized I didn't actually show how I solved the massive context growth and slowdown issue. So I'm just going to quickly cover that here real quick because that is something important for folks who definitely will want to have that information if they encounter that same issue with a local model. So from the home folder on our system, and again, I'm using Ubuntu, we have to go into the Clawdbot folder. And then from in there, we're going to click on agents. From within agents, we click in main, then sessions, and then we're going to see, depending on how much your context grows, you will see multiple of these kind of files with just a bunch of random strings of characters and then .jsonl. These are what I deleted. There were probably about 10 to 20 of them accumulated. I deleted them all, then I restarted the entire service, and then my prompt processing speed was very snappy considering the hardware that's being run on. So deleting these shrunk that context length for me. I wanted to just quickly ensure that I put this specifically in the video because that can be a point of confusion for folks using this locally, as there's not a ton of documentation or tutorials online to do so. So I've been playing with this and I was dealing with an incredible slowdown all of a sudden when we hooked WhatsApp up. We can see right here in some more verbose information that this is currently using 64,000 tokens. So each time I send it a message, it's sending that many tokens as well, which is a huge issue. And especially on a system like this where prompt processing speed is molasses slow, I'm going to reset the session, which hopefully should hypothetically fix all of that. And we see that our okay, so we have a session stored there. I wonder if I can just manually delete it instead of playing with the command line. I imagine it probably will work. And again, I wanted to just test this in almost more of like an exploratory manner than a Oh my god, guys, it made me my video workflow script. All right, I'm now trying. It seems to be confused about the specific browser tool use, and this could also be a limitation of the local model finally. So I just instructed it to use the browser tool, go to bijanbowen.com, and then give me a summary of what it finds. I'll put screenshots of the phone thing right here, but this did work. Now, this is exactly what I was hoping to be able to set up. From a local AI setup, we're not using any API keys right now. This is running entirely offline, at least the LLM we're using. We just used our phone to control Clawdbot to autonomously browse the web, find information from a specific website, and then send it back to us all through WhatsApp. This is kind of the demonstration I was hoping to get, but specifically with a local model. So this was using GPT-OSS.com. And again, I will paste a summary or screenshot of this summary into the video editing so folks can actually see what this is without trying to be like, oh, what is he showing, like his hand shaking? Because it's not the best to not have like a proper image. But this is exactly what I wanted. I'm going to keep messing with this now. So I wonder, I can't imagine this can perform autonomous browser navigation actions, just given that, although it may be returning clickable elements. So let's do, because this should have history here, click send me a message. I think this will probably trip this up because of the specific model we're using. If we were using Claude Opus 4.5, damn, it did. This I like, because this is where things get kind of like dangerous. Let's do fill out the form, and then and again, Clawdbot is the harness that links this all together. The model is what is giving the intelligence to this. So I think that's something that may be lost in all of the hype. Is this is a very interesting orchestration tool. The raw intelligence and power is coming from the LLMs themselves, not from Clawdbot. Clawdbot is like a fantastic navigation map, but the model is like the person reading the navigation map and knowing what to do with it, if I were to give. So check this out. I've opened the contact page. It contains a form with fields for your name, email address, subject, and send an email button to send an inquiry. This is actually rather cool, and this is more hype-worthy in my personal opinion, especially because this is working offline on a Strix Halo DGX Spark, a Mac that could run OSS 120B. So let's send myself a message. So I've given it the specific information I want filled in on this form, and I've told it to then send it. Again, at some point this will break because it's a limitation of the model we're using, but we see it's filling these in autonomously right now as controlled from my phone. So if it actually properly sends the email, damn, this is cool. Okay. I get the hype. Again, I'm running this with a burner phone. Not burner, because that makes me sound like a criminal. This is a development phone that the phone number is not linked to anything important. I have this phone specifically for playing with local AI, because it's a ROG phone. It can run like fairly beefy models. The Strix Halo has no important information on it. This is very cool. I just sent myself an email autonomously controlling this. This is something now. I could be out and about outside of the house, which would be what out and about means, and be controlling this thing to do whatever on the web without having to do it from my phone. So this is very agentic, I guess would be said. I'm kind of impressed at this point. Let's see if the GPT-OSS model will shut down certain internet-based queries, or if the Clawdbot orchestrator will trick the model into refusing. I mean, you know what I mean. I'm sorry, but I can't help with that. Come on. And that's a restriction of the model, so it won't do nefarious things, at least with GPT-OSS 120p. Now, I don't know if this has the ability to send the image it takes. I know it can take an image because we saw that earlier in the video, but I don't know if it has the skill level to send it back to me in the chat. No, it doesn't seem to have sent the image, but I'm sure this is something that either would need a more powerful model or some other form of configuration to actually work. I'm impressed. All right, so something that I very much want to do is give a quick tutorial on how to get this set up to use a local LLM through LM Studio and its server capability. This is going to be a pretty light tutorial, but it will give you enough information to, if you know how to use LM Studio and you have it on your computer, this will allow you to fairly simply set up Clawdbot to use your local LLM, just so people can use this without having to worry about API keys and things like that. Keep in mind all of the security considerations we mentioned previously. previously. So to begin this, we are at the GitHub repository for Clawdbot, and we're going to start just through the node installation, which is recommended right here. If you're unfamiliar with this and say, I don't know how to use this, I would give you two suggestions. If you're on a device that has no sensitive information, paste this into ChatGPT and ask it. If you're on a device that has all your sensitive information and this looks very new and concerning to you, don't install this program. I would, just to be blatantly honest. So with that warning out of the way, we are now just performing this specific installation install process. And at the same time, I have gone ahead and downloaded GPT-OSS 20B as well, so we can test it. This is a different computer that has not had any of this on it before because I wanted to emulate the fresh install process. Now that we've run this command and everything worked without a hitch, our next step is to run this command, which we have pasted in the terminal right here. And this is going to give us the setup screen, which we're probably a bit familiar with from the previous portions of this video. I understand, yes, the disclaimer. And onboarding mode, I am going to select Quick Start. Now keep in mind, this is what I did specifically to get this working. There is probably some way to just from here get this manually set up with LM Studio, but this is not the way I did it. So I'm just going to select a random model right here, or I think that's the wrong thing I selected. I'm going to select skip for now, and then all models, and then keep current default. So I'll just press enter right here. Then it's going to give us the option to select channels if we want, such as how we set up WhatsApp. For now, I'm going to skip this as well because these are things that you can go set up yourself. The important part of this tutorial is just to get it working with LM Studio with your local LLM. So I will skip that for now. I will skip configuration of skills as well. And then our next step, I'm going to skip these for now as well. And then we have our gateway service initialized and installed. So we should in a second get an opportunity here to run this either through like the web UI or the terminal. And I'm going to just have this run in web UI. And we see that we now have our Clawdbot web UI. The next step, because we have run through this, is to now go ahead and modify the JSON configuration file from within our home directory. So on Ubuntu or Linux, whichever version, ensure you have show hidden files enabled in the file browser, which is what allows this Clawdbot folder to appear. So we'll click into this, and then I need to figure out which specific folder had the JSON. Give me a second. Okay, so it's just in the root directory here. So from within this Clawdbot folder, we have clawdbot.json. Open this with a text editor or VS Code or something of the sort, and we will see that this is kind of our, think of it as a setup profile for this that has pertinent information, and you'll get more familiar with this very likely as you continue on. Now, as we see right here, I don't believe we see any specific model provider or anything of the sort. So this is where I'm going to paste in something that I had working previously. And keep in mind, I will paste the entirety of the JSON file here that functions for this working in LM Studio. So don't worry too much about directly following my instruction here. Just familiarize yourself with the concept of this JSON file, its location, and then modifying it will allow us to connect the LM Studio model. Now I've implemented the required changes here to this JSON configuration file. I'm now going to just close out of that, and we're going to run our onboarding again for Clawdbot, which just consists of running this one more time. And this time, fingers crossed, if everything is working correctly, we should hypothetically be able to now override and just have it set to our LM Studio model. Keeping that in mind, I'm going to hop into LM Studio right here and just ensure that I have the model loaded right now. Context length and the specific model you choose to use will depend entirely on your system specifications and how much performance it has. I'm just going to do 8,192 now because it's just for a simple test to make sure everything's working. So I'll load this in, and this is running on a laptop right now, so we don't have max performance. Next up, we're going to go into this developer console right here, and mine already has the server running. Truth be told, I don't remember 100% if there's anything special that I've done with this LM Studio setup on this system. I don't believe there is. So this is technically running, and we have pertinent information right here for API usage as well. So if you do happen to get stuck, you can share this along with the sample JSON snippet with Claude or GPT or Gemini. Give it this information as well, and it will probably help you get it running. So with that, we have our server running. We're going to hop back here and run the onboarding one more time. Quick start, use existing values, and we can see that the existing configuration is now reflected because we modified that JSON configuration file. And we'll press use existing values, but it still has us go through this whole thing. So skip for now, all providers. then keep current model LM Studio OpenAI GPT-OSS 20B, and I will skip for now the like all the rest of this, including that, and I'll just try to go ahead and restart the gateway service, and then we'll go to it online, and assuming we send a message and do get a response. So I was getting some issues in trying to get this working, and as we see right here, I neglected to set the context length long enough. This is just kind of a limitation of using this with a local LLM, is that the context length needs to be very high to allow this to work properly, and that is going to be pretty performance intensive for a lot of systems, which is why the unified memory systems are fantastic to use this, although I don't know if going and buying the cheapest Mac Mini is the best way to go, although I assume those people are just using cloud models, so they probably won't have much of a problem. I think this GPU should be able to handle loading in GPT-OSS with max context. Okay, it has. And now that that's loaded, our JSON should be correct. And if I send a message now, we should hopefully receive some verbose logs, prompt processing, and then we get a response here. So this is now a properly set up Clawdbot instance with a local model running through LM Studio. Again, there's a ton of hacking and tweaking you can do with this, but I wanted to at least provide some form of reference for using this with LM Studio, as this is a very intimidating and difficult to set up program. I don't entirely know how noobs are just carelessly setting this up and understanding it. I won't comment on that. I mean, the final thing I want to show is just how to hook this up with a browser instance running on the host system, because this is very cool, and the browser interactive capabilities of this, at least with GPT-OSS 120B, were rather impressive and something very cool. So assuming Clawdbot is running, this is a list of commands that we're just going to run sequentially. That was a mistake. I did not mean to paste these all in at the same time. But I want to reiterate a couple of things. One, you need to already have Chrome installed on your system. Two, just be careful with how you use this. And three, copy, paste. But it's, you stupid computer, man. So we first run the Clawdbot browser profile Claude start, and we see this automatically opened a Chrome instance on our machine. Now I have to find the rest of these commands because they weren't copy pasting properly. Verify it's running. I'm just going to type them manually. Clawdbot browser, and these are things I just kind of had Gemini help me with, so if you get stuck, you can also do that as well. We're just checking the status of this browser right here, okay, and we have all of the pertinent information. And again, if you get stuck, definitely use this to paste into whatever is helping you so that you do have assistance of like something that is probably pretty good at this. You can also specifically send it to the documentation reference page for Clawdbot, which is likely going to be pretty helpful as well. Now let's see, is it good? Nope, that's not the... This system is very buggy. This is a 5090 laptop on Ubuntu 2024 and MSI. It's just been a disaster with Ubuntu. Now, if this correctly is working, we should see Clawdbot automatically go to the news.y Combinator website, which we can see it just did do. So this is very good. It's all working more or less. And the final thing to do is, as we see right here, test a screenshot via CLI. We don't actually need to do that right now. If it actually made it to this page, we're pretty much good to go. But the next thing to do would be to test the model with interactivity with this browser, which we'll cover now. Now, all I've done here is paste the output from this specific terminal session, which we see on screen right here, alongside the clawdbot.json. I've given it to Claude Opus 4.5, and I said, please just add this into this JSON. This is a conversation I have history with, so it has some pertinent understanding of the Clawdbot docs and things of the sort, so yours may not work off the bat immediately as smoothly, but this is a way that really can make it a lot easier to get this thing working on your specific system. So as we see right here, all we're going to do hypothetically is paste this now to overwrite our previously existing configuration file. Save it, which will overwrite it and should probably kind of hot reload, but just for good measure, we'll do what this says as well. We're going to paste those commands. So we're going to restart the gateway. We're also going to restart the browser. We see that there is an issue. Okay, so if you get an error there restarting the cloud browser control server, you just need to wait a second and then run that again because it hadn't really woken up yet, to put it simply. Our next step now should hypothetically be to be able to send this model a prompt with specific instruction to use the Claude browser profile. The smaller the model, the more specific it needs to be told how to do what it is that we want it to accomplish, with specific emphasis on all settings it needs to adhere to. And assuming this is set up correctly, we should be able to tell this model to use the browser tool with profile Claude. So that's important to tell it what profile it is, or else it would give errors saying, I don't have the browser tool hooked up. So here's a screenshot taken with the Claude browser profile. And if it just says untitled, okay, so it tried something. Maybe I'll try a little more specific prompt. Here's something that should give us a little more of a deterministic output of whether or not this worked properly. Here's a screenshot of Google's homepage taken with the, okay. So we'll click on this. And if we have a screenshot right here of the Google homepage, this is actually showing that GPT-OSS 20b is able to use the browser tool if configured correctly, which would be pretty impressive. We see right here in this directory, the screenshot did show up, so this actually works. Then following this, you can set this up with WhatsApp and things like that. I'm not going to get into that because there are so many different options and configurations for this that it would be impossible to cover them all, but this should give folks a pretty good starting point to both get this set up with LM Studio on your local system if you're using a performant model. So this is a 24 gigabyte video card in the system I'm using right now with GPT-OSS 20b set to maximum context length. In Clawdbot, it's actually able to at least function autonomously with using the browser, which is kind of cool. So again, I would say that if you have problems setting this up, use an LLM to help you with the JSON file in specific. It should reference the documents, and you can point it to the specific Clawdbot documentation as well if it's having trouble, and it will then understand, okay, this is how I need to structure this configuration JSON file and things of the sort. It's very doable, and just keep security conscientious things in mind. But this is actually pretty neat, and I'm happy to see that it's working all right with OSS 20b as well with a local model, because I didn't want to test this using a cloud model. I mean, a lot of us have these systems for a reason, so why not find ways to use them instead of just going to API. So that's pretty much going to wrap this video up. This is probably going to be a long, and ideally, I could have tried to stretch this out and tutorial video, first look. I don't know, I just don't want to. So that's what we have here. With that, if you have any questions, please feel free to not leave them in the comments. I'm not going to be able to assist, just ask Claude. If you have any comments, that's fine. And thanks for watching.